Good afternoon. Today, my guest is Tahir Jeter, who is the writer, director, and one of the producers of the romantic comedy How to Tell Your Douchebag. Um, uh, the title bears some discussion, of course. The film is about a popular, quite handsome fellow who lives in Brooklyn and has a wild dating life until he meets a woman who sort of turns him on his head. Tahir, thank you. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you, Andrew. It's a pleasure.
Um, the Since you wrote the film, the first obvious question is it somewhat autobiographical?
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's fascinating now. I guess it's been 10 years since I filmed How to Tell You're a Douchebag, and it has been quite interesting to see how the world has turned since. I think, in a sense, the film kind of presaged or predated a lot of conversations that are being had about gender at present. But essentially, shall we say, I was a bit of a cad at a certain point. And I think there was a moment when, and I can't say that every, shall we say, heterosexual identifying man that is a cad has this moment. But I think there is a point in one's maturity where you start to interrogate this question of, okay, at what sort of person do I want to be uh, from this moment in my life onward? Do I want to keep um, am I being thoughtless in how I'm conducting my romantic relationships, right? So, the protagonist,
Wait, at
Ray,
what age do you think people think that? Like
well, I think
50?
you, well, I think that one thing that I think is so fascinating about cities like New York and Los Angeles is that there's this kind of Peter Pan syndrome that's endemic to those cities just because of the constant deluge of interesting people that come in and the the way that you don't you can choose to grow up in certain ways, right, with respect to your career, but with respect to your romantic life or your personal life, you can never settle down. You can have whatever kind of lifestyle you want, right? And so I think for me personally, in my late 20s, as I think I always wanted a family, but being a person that realized the pursuit of the entertainment of a career in the entertainment industry, perhaps made it such that some of those things, those prototypical trappings of a sort of normal American life, may be kind of delayed, right? Um, and so I think I was in a stage of arrested development, and even while I was doing this movie, which consumed a great part of my life, I started to think, well, do I want to keep having these relationships in which I'm not allowing myself to be available to these people that are really wonderful, and I'm just kind of going with the wind, or do I actually want to be more thoughtful about how I engage perhaps the next person that I meet?
So was there a particular woman that brought you to this epiphany?
There was, yes. And so she was the Rochelle Marseille character, who is the sort of feminist foil to this unthinking cad of a protagonist. She was based on a composite of both some famous writers of the age that I knew in the Brooklyn area, and a woman that I had recently fallen for, and who I, of course, was not able to continue with. More so her choice than mine, right? And I think in feeling rejected, I had this moment where I began to realize how entitled I had felt, and that despite having been a heartbreaker in many ways in my own right, suddenly when the same sort of thing happened to me, I noticed all of these feelings of entitlement and indignation, and I was like, this is just so silly. Um, so initially when I wrote the film, so much of it was supposed to um, investigate not only those feelings of male entitlement, but to satirize them in a way that really makes, I think, men think about what they're doing in these sorts of
And
situations.
so just to get the chronology, you had written the film after this woman had dumped you?
Well, so incidentally, it took 2 years for this to happen. There was a first attempt in which I had attempted to engage her. Things kind of went up until a certain point. She rejected me. We had a bit of an age gap. And then in the interim, when I was depressed about having been rejected the first time, I began to write the film. And then we began to date again just as I was about to start production, and things intensified. And then she ultimately decided to not go forward in the end. So it was a it was a masochistic exercise in a romantic pursuit on my end, but
Oh.
it gave me plenty of dramatic fodder.
Did you ever hear from her after the film came out?
Yes, and that was, but I had to. It was part of the reason that one of the reasons that I left for Los Angeles, because we were actually we lived relatively close by, and I was very. I mean, I fall very hard, um, and I was just like, it's not healthy to be in this close of a proximity to a person. I feel like I wasn't able to grieve well, so between the film going to Sundance and everything else, I was like, oh, this is a signal that you need to leave the city.
Got it. And
Yeah.
if I recall, before the film, or maybe as you were writing the film, you began to write a blog from the point of view of the character, correct?
I did, yeah. Both Ray and his dramatic interests are bloggers and kind of aspiring writers. So I had I just started to draft numerous blog articles that we could both reference in in the film to suggest that, that despite this character kind of being a inadvertent fool, he actually is somewhat of a good writer, right? And so it wasn't a blog that really existed outside of the realm of the film itself, but it gave us a lot of social media posts to cut to and fun post production things. But I think what was what was interesting about the film was it actually was a snapshot in time of like so many ideas exchanged in the realm of Black Twitter and a lot of the people in publishing that I knew that like had were in the process of making their first books were taking to social media to express all sorts of ideas about the world and all kinds of philosophies. And I think it's a really interesting snapshot, not only in terms of gender dynamics and what would later be known as the gender war, but this moment in time where a lot of millennial Black publishers were getting their voices out there, and I think it's a moment that isn't often represented on film in the way that we touch upon.
Well, so you think it bears some resemblance or similarity to American fiction?
I think there's some of that. I think there's a little bit of like there's a Taming of the Shrew meets like You've Got Mail kind of thing. I don't know that it's as well hewn as that kind of movie, but it's that kind of vibe of this dynamic back and forth through computers and these meet cutes that happen in real life that also have this virtual counterpart as well. Um, so it's a modern rom com in that sense.
Right. Do just I think many people watching will be independent filmmakers or aspiring independent filmmakers, and the casting I thought was fantastic. Can you tell us some about that process?
Oh boy. So we were so fortunate to have been able to land the cast that we had. DeWanda Wise, who's also a producer, is a an actress that I've known for years, and she was super supportive in guiding the casting process. She also pointed us to William Jackson Harper, who, as you know, has had. I mean, they've both had some terrific launches after the film. But DeWanda also pointed us out to Charles Bryce, and there was Jenna Williams, who I had known through various social circles. There's so many bit parts in this film that I had to do a very rigorous casting process. So there's a lot of testing of different parts, and particularly Charles Bryce against many of the women that he's dated. And there's also Alexander Malzak, with whom I had worked on a previous film. So I kind of have like two leads and three main supports, and I think they all have terrific comedic timing. And I mean, I was actually working at NYU at the time, which facilitated my ability to get resources resources to all sorts of facilities and audition rooms and post-production equipment.
So
So I was
did
very
you
fortunate.
audition? Because I know it's often a challenge for independent filmmakers to get to audition potential cast members together, but it sounds like you had that opportunity.
Well, well, not quite. I mean, we were a lot of it required stepping out on faith in the sense that I think like I'd actually never met William prior. That was through DeWanda's suggestion. Charles had an agent, and we went off of a video audition. Jenna Williams, I had known in person through mutual friends, and Alexander Malzak I had worked with before. He was actually the lead in a short film I'd done. So it was kind of it was a lot of and by the way, like a lot of casting happened in like the month before we were about to shoot just because of necessity. We had gone through rounds of different actors, and I mean, as you probably know, it's hectic. We filmed this movie for about $100,000. So you don't have the resources of casting directors, and
Right.
you know how this goes. So, um, but I think for what we had to work with, I think we accomplished something that was pretty impressive and fun. And I love, I mean, so many of the bit part actors we did audition in person, and that was a real privilege as well. So it was a lot of cobbling together, like as production was approaching. So it
And
was
what was the I know, many screenwriters like to set their films in New York City, downtown, Brooklyn, around and about. How challenging was it for you to film in New York?
Well, so luckily for me, I had filmed and also worked in various capacities as a crew member on numerous New York City short films. I shot a web series, another autobiographical project in New York City since 2009, and we filmed this movie in 2015. So on a certain budget, I think you don't have the footprint that a significantly larger production will have. And so New York City, thankfully, is one of the most how shall I say? You can get the best ROI in terms of visuals, establishing shots, geography, and of course, there's the sort of nostalgic factor that comes from filming in a place that has some of the most gorgeous architecture and so many great films from the 70s, 60s, 50s have just been shot on the streets. And so if you're um, keen on finding select locations beforehand, you can actually um, you can get beautiful, gorgeous shots without needing to have a huge team behind you, which is a wonderful thing. And so I think
And
we really did.
did you
Yeah,
get
sorry.
permissions?
We did, and then I mean, I mean, we had terrific producers that were utilizing permits for, and I filmed purposefully close by my apartment and within my apartment. So most of the streets around there, it's like when we're shooting exteriors, we always have permits, but there were some days where we just needed establishing shots where we just, as we say, run and gun it. And it's like
Right.
myself and two crew members running with an area Alexa down by the Brooklyn Bridge to get, an establishing
Right.
shot in Dumbo, right? So
Right.
I think if you're flexible to those things, you can be nimble enough to get all of that, and it'll serve your film very well.
Um, and then, just for those who will live in envy of your experience, what was it like to premiere the film at Sundance? Do you
Oh
have
my
a
gosh.
do you have a iconic memory?
I do because it was I mean, I'm gonna try to keep this light. We were premiering at the same day and time as a huge, huge, hugely anticipated film that I think you'll recall. I'll leave the name out. But so it was I felt like my audience was split. I had butterflies in my
You can
stomach.
say the name.
Okay, so it was Nate Parker's Birth of a Nation, which, I believe was made for close to $8 million. Our audiences are very similar despite differences in tone. And I was worried that a large part of our would be audience had segued out of our screening to go see that movie. And, I'd screened this before in small work in progress screenings, but like, it was insane. I think I had been seeing you again for the, third or fourth time. I was meeting my lawyers for like the second time, and I'm in the room with all these Hollywood people that I know are watching my movie, and I'm so frightened that they're not going to laugh at the things that I think are funny, right? Um, but the Sundance people are the programmers and directors are just so supportive, and you feel so embraced when you take part in the festival. I had so many butterflies in my stomach that during the Q&A, I don't remember what I said. It was just all adrenaline and everything else. And I hope I was being gracious enough to highlight everyone's contributions fairly. But it's such a wonderful experience, and obviously, fortunately enough, we were through your diligence able to get distribution, which is not often something that is the case. So I'm so grateful to you for all of your hard work as well. Just because I think we know there's sort of this there is this there's this movement towards Sundance, and there's this peak of anticipation, and then after that, there's this curiosity around what happens next, what happens over the next 6 months. So I think for the resources that we had, I think we did very well, and I'm very pleased to have partnered with you as a result. I have
Oh,
to
well,
say,
thank you. No, I mean, you bring up a good point, which is that for many, Sundance feels like the apex because the next thing that's going to happen is a huge deal. Um, Many more films coming at that director, and your career is made. But in fact, many films that are seen that premiere at Sundance go on to be seen by friends and family. Um, and I mean, even though they're good, just
yeah,
it didn't strike the commercial chord that buyers happened to be looking for that year. And no, so it was great that the film did get such wide distribution and is still in distribution.
absolutely.
Do you have any questions for me before we wrap up? I don't want to take up your whole day.
No, no, no. It's always a pleasure to see you. I mean, not to get off track, but can you speak about anything that you're excited about seeing that's coming out this year? I know that this is a bit of a tangent, but
Oh, interesting. Um, there's I don't have much on my list right now. I mean, since I live in New York, I've been more focused on at least the past few months on Broadway plays I want to see or
wonderful.
off Broadway plays, and so we've been going to a fair bit of theater. It feels like a bit of a lull for uh, for big movies or even small movies. Um, so no, but no, I look forward to being surprised. I'm going off to Cannes in about a month, and I'm excited for that program. And then Tribeca follows quickly thereafter. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I hope you
Anything you're excited about?
I'd like to see. I can't remember the director's name, but Adela Romansky has the Sorry Baby film. It might be playing at Cannes. That I'd really like to see. I'm fond of the work that that group puts together. I'm just because I'm a Spike Lee fan. I do want to see his next piece with Denzel, which has his last piece with Denzel that has some interesting casting. And unfortunately, I haven't been to the movies enough. I need to get back out there. Sometimes it's tough going just because of so many things that have changed within the industry over the past 10 years.
It is, but I'm such a it, going to a movie theater is such a happy experience, even if it's even when it's not a good movie, but or even when it's a sad movie. I really like that experience of sitting in my seat and turning off my phone, which I do, and just watching the movie. Um, you know, I think there's no comparison to seeing that experience with seeing it at home. I mean, obviously, most films are seen on the small screen by most people, um, but the going to the movie theater experience is still a great one.
Yeah, it's impossible to be replaced. So
Right.
yeah,
Thank
absolutely.
goodness.
Thank
Okay.
goodness.
Well,
Yeah,
I thank you for your time, and we'll keep in touch.
absolutely. It's always a pleasure.
Thanks, Tahir. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.